Hi again, and welcome to our channel here at Mundelein Church of the Nazarene and our ongoing series, Not What You Think. In the past few weeks, we've talked about a lot of the things that Christians believe, and sometimes it's not what we think they do. And so we've gone through some of the differences or some of the unique, distinctive expressions of Christianity that are often underappreciated in the larger world. So this week I thought as we kind of bring this series to a close, we'll talk about what makes someone a Christian. I think that's a good topic. Now, it might not be, again, what we think it does. So I've kind of boiled it down to just the basics. What does it mean to be Christian? Well, first and foremost, I think it means the belief that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that He died and rose again. That is the foundational belief. And somehow that death and somehow that resurrection still has ongoing effects today. Not only changes me, but changes our entire world. Something momentous happened that day, whether anybody believes in it or not. But the first thing that makes someone a Christian is belief that Jesus is the Son of God. Second thing, I think, that requires each of us to place our trust, our lives, our very identity in that hope. We believe that something has changed because Jesus died and rose again. And so I'm going to place my very existence, my identity in that. Now that's a bigger statement than I think a lot of us think it is. If my whole identity is in Jesus Christ, that means my identity is not in an economic argument. It means it's not whether I'm Republican or Democrat or some of the tribes that we separate ourselves into here. The tribe that we most identify with is one of Jesus Christ. Also, a Christian means that we participate in the ongoing life of the church. We are not allowed to be a Christian alone. We can't be a Christian, we can't love Jesus Christ and not love His people. Now listen, I understand. Sometimes there are people whose understanding might be a little limited, or they might not approach the world the same way that we do. But that doesn't mean we don't love them. And that means we don't appreciate them for the strengths and talents that they do bring. So we have to participate in the ongoing life of the church. We are supposed to be part of this gigantic rescue mission, this transformational project, where our relationships that we demonstrate here should be different, should be an example to the larger world out there. So we have to believe that Jesus died and rose again, He's the Son of God, that we've placed our entire trust, our identity in that hope, that we participate in the life of the church, and lastly, that we live a life of faithfulness. Now, I didn't say perfection. I didn't even say almost perfection. I said faithfulness. All of us as we go through life will mature and grow. We'll become aware of parts of ourselves that we didn't know before. We can live a faithful life. Some of us have been parents for a long time, and maybe we had a kid that was even the best of kids. Hey, never gave us any problems, never stayed out late, never really rebelled. All the good things we might say, they weren't perfect. There was that one period of time, maybe that bad month. There was that when they were going through this hard thing, and maybe they talked back, but that doesn't mean they weren't faithful and they weren't good kids. Some of us had the best of parents. And we can look back and we can pick at, I wish they had done this a little different or that a little different. But that doesn't mean they weren't faithful. There's that verse in the New Testament, He who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. There's awareness that we're not always going to be perfect and do everything right. But those are the four things. Belief, place our identity in Jesus Christ, participate in the life of the church, and live a life of faithfulness. There's an old idea, I think, that sprung up at some point in the church that becoming a Christian meant you had to pray a certain prayer or say certain words or come to some emotional decision. And those are certainly valid for some people, but some of us just did not come to Christ that way. It might have been a relatively emotionless decision. It might have been that emotional decision. Or some of us just might have determined, it just makes sense. Let me just go through some of the classic arguments for faith. The first one is, every effect, every event we see in life, every event that goes on has to have a cause. At the start of the chain of events was originally the original cause, or the first mover. Without it, everything is just a random accident. But there's an argument that there has to be a God, there has to be something worthy of our worship, because at the original start of everything that was, there has to be a first mover. That's one argument. Another argument is, in everything we see, you look around, whether it's in outer space or our galaxy or our world or the ocean, anything you look at, there's design and there's order and there's beauty. Therefore, there must be a designer. In order for life to exist, everything must be finely tuned. We know that to be true. There has to be a certain set of situations. There has to be a sun at the center of everything. That sun has to burn steadily. It can't fluctuate like I think the majority of stars do. It has to not even be the most massive, but a kind of a limited size. The orbit around that sun has to be stable, not elliptical, has to be relatively circular, and existing in a little narrow zone that will allow life to exist. The planet would have to have a stable atmosphere and water, and the planet would have to be tilted on its axis a certain way, or else the equator would get hotter and hotter and hotter, and the poles colder and colder and colder, would become relatively unstable. There has to be tidal pools, so there has to be a moon that circles around it. It has to be kind of large for that planet to have that kind of effect. It has to have tectonic plates. Look how far down the road I'm getting. That planet would have to be relatively on the edge of a galaxy, because inside the middle part, there's too many collisions, too much radiation, too much stuff happening. So we see all this design, we see all this order, we see all this beauty. We have mathematical formulas that determine things precisely, that we can figure those out. All those things presuppose the mind of a creator. The last argument is called the moral argument. The fact that most of us are born with this inherent sense of right and wrong, of fairness. Every 2-year-old, there's some words they know right away, mama and dada, and maybe their favorite toy, but one of the things they say first and foremost is not fair. Even a 2-year-old looks around and wonders why someone else got a bigger scoop of ice cream than they did. There is also a striving for the good that seems hardwired in most of humanity. If we have this sense of good, there must be a God that put this there. This sense of right and wrong. The argument used against this is very simple. Why then does evil exist? If there's a good God, why is there evil? Why do bad things happen to good people? And some people think this is the end of that argument. The response is, how do we even know to ascertain good from evil if not we have this inherent sense within us? How do we know to judge bad versus good, immoral from moral, fair versus unfair, without this inherent knowledge of the good? Now, some of us have never really entertained those things, and that's fine too. There's maybe the old farmer argument, and it's probably good enough for most of us. It might be the most powerful yet. For those of us who are Christian, for those of us who have an ongoing relationship with God, the old farmer argument is this. You ask me how I know that God lives or God exists. It's very simple. He lives within my heart. We've experienced the reality. In the worst days of life, He's been a comfort. In the stressful times of life, He's given guidance. And in every point of life, He has sustained and led all the way. That's why we offer you this Jesus Christ and this life of faith. That's what makes a Christian. Thank you for joining us. We'll be on to different topics in future weeks. Please feel free to join us. We'd like you to like us, subscribe us. But please join us again next week as we've moved on, not what you think, but a new topic, and we'll see you then.